Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry we're running a couple minutes late. We had a really great study session here. And we will start this meeting now. I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask for the roll call, please.
Councilmember Elliott.
Here.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Fitzhenry.
Here.
Councilmember Sandal.
Here.
Mayor Gotel.
Here. And would everyone please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance up here? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I'd ask the approval of the minutes of the Special City Council work session of September 10th, 2013, the Special Concurrent City Council and HRA work session of September 10th, 2013, and the regular City Council meeting of September 10th, 2013.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tonight, I'm really excited because we have a presentation by Hennepin County Mike Freeman, our Hennepin County Attorney. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Coming home time.
Yes.
I sat a few nights behind your dais. It was in the old city hall, but I was privileged to call Richfield my home for a long time, and I'm glad to be back with friends. And thanks for the opportunity to talk a little bit about crime and what we've been trying to do to make our city safer. First, I want to say that we have great relationships with your police force. Your chief is a fine person. We work closely together, and to make sure that works well, we have a fellow named Bill Mondale, whose name you may recall, is our liaison with the Richfield Police Department and School District. And Bill's doing a nice job and has high regards to your police force. The good news, council members and Madam Mayor, is crime is down. Your violent crime rate dropped 40% from 374 in 2007 to 223 last year. That's a profound drop. Your property crimes also dropped, but not quite as much. Started at 3,500 in 2007 and ended last year in 2,800. But if we look at just two types of crime, aggravated assaults and burglaries, you will see that your citizens should feel relatively comfortable. Aggravated assaults. The assaults which involve a gun or a knife or other weapon was at 51. Last year it dropped to 32. That's fewer than 3 a month. Burglaries dropped from a 2005 peak at 266 to 144 in 2010, or a 45% drop. That's really progress, and you all should feel very proud of that. There are a lot of reasons for that drop. Most importantly is the fine work of your police office and your police officers. A lot of partners in law enforcement, community groups, and I think good prosecution has something to do with that. I think the most important part that the Hennepin County Attorney's Office can do to assist is to prosecute and prosecute well. And I'm pleased that our performance of the cases we charge, 94% either plead guilty or found guilty at trial. That's pretty damn good. If it was much higher than that, we probably weren't charging cases we should. If it was a lot lower than that, we weren't doing our job. That's 92 to 94% is exactly where I want to be, and I think you should be pleased about that. But let me assure you, we don't just go after the easy ones. Talk to Joe and Senior and Joe Junior Gustafson, who ran the beatdown posse in North Minneapolis. For 30 years, Tim Dolan, Minneapolis police chief, told me that these people were thorns in their sides. And we used the racketeering law and took both Joe Senior and Junior down and took them, and they both got 30-plus year sentences. Or the meth case that the United States Attorney's Office wouldn't take. But by the time we were done, 21 people were found guilty, and a cartel that went all the way to Mexico, and the chief kingpin got 30-plus years. We're pretty proud of that. The second piece of good news I want to tell you is the number of people in prison has been steady. After 30 years of increase, it's steady. Because we have recognized that putting people in prison is not always the answer. Low-level drug offenders ought to be diverted, and their addiction ought to be taken care of. If they're big-time dealers, their problem is greed. And I don't know any treatment program that handles greed as well as 30 years behind bars. But we need to recognize the difference between the two, and we need to make a difference in that. We've got a drug court in Hennepin County that tries to take the low-level offenders and work with their addiction. We have a veterans court because there are a lot of people coming back from overseas that have a lot of problems, and they end up in the criminal justice system, and frankly, they don't deserve to be there. We try to move them out. We use DNA as the great truth serum to solve crimes. DNA is a wonderful thing because the biggest problem in criminal justice is identifying the people who really committed the crime and having the right folks. Anyone who's been involved in a criminal procedure knows that perpetrator identification is very difficult. And what we can do with DNA is not only to prove the people who are guilty, but to prove the people who are innocent. Because if the DNA doesn't match up, we dismiss the case, as we should. We go way back. We recently charged a case of a Robert Skoglund who had committed a rape in 1984. The DNA he left behind was so small, we couldn't do it until we had modern technology. If you smoke a cigarette, you drink a can of pop. If you rub the back of your shirt collar, that's all the DNA we need. And the great part about that is we find out what really happened. Did you really commit the crime or didn't you? And that's why we like DNA so much. Crime prevention is important to us. When I was county attorney the first time, from 91 to 98 until I got involved in something that a wrestler got in the way, but we don't remember that stuff anymore. We didn't have as good a DNA as we do today, but we have it today, and it's very good. We also try to work very hard on things like truancy and curfew. 98% of the kids who commit a felony are truant first. It does not take a rocket scientist to figure out, let's get those kids in school. And our Be at School program is a nationally acclaimed program. For 90% of the kids who are in our program have no unexcused absences for 90 days. These are kids who've been hardcore truants. We get in their heads, we get in their parents' heads, and we say, you got to go to school. I don't want to tell the school system how to teach kids. I want to get them to the door to do that. And you should be very proud that our Richfield school system picked up the program that we tried to create in my first terms as county attorney. And when I returned, they're still doing the same thing. And they were getting kids to go to school. The only school district that I know of in this county that was still doing it. We work real hard with kids on diversion. Now, I would suggest that the two male council members and I have probably done something in our youth that we're not very proud about and weren't very smart. But we were probably real lucky to have folks, I certainly did, my Marine Corps father set me straight. But a lot of kids don't have a father like that. And we need to help those young men understand that crime is pretty stupid. If they're TPing a house or they're harassing somebody, if it's not serious, let's get in their head, let's talk to their parents, let's work with them. Let's divert that kid, and let's not put a criminal record on them that will, be there for the rest of their lives. So we try to do diversion, we try to do truancy prevention, and yet we prosecute the folks we need to do. We can't do any of that without the support of the council and the police here. I'm just glad in my community that we still do it right. So thank you, Madam Mayor, for having me. I'd be glad to answer questions from anyone except Councilmember Elliott.
Oh, there's some history there.
Many secrets.
That's okay. First of all, I want to thank you, and I know that you've actually helped us a couple of times, Mike, on some houses that we took with some drug issues, too, that we would had some really hard times, too. And again, that was one of those hard things that you had to do, and we moved those people right out of here, and that was a great impact, I'm sure, to our city and to the police force that was regularly called to these homes with the problems. And the fear that it has in the neighborhoods of people who don't want to call those people in, fear, something happening to them.
Well, thank you for
appreciate
remembering that, Madam Mayor. The one house was 4 blocks from my former house where I raised my kids. And the great story there was, I was there with your police officers, watching board up the house. And the woman who had lived in the house, who could not control her 2 kids, as she drove down the way, she stopped to us, and I thought, oh boy, we're going to get it now. She said, thank you. I couldn't control my boys. You helped me. Thank you very much. And I was just really moved by that. Yeah. And like I said, it was 4 blocks from my house, about 2 blocks from your old house, Councilmember Garcia. And we know the neighborhood, and it's a good neighborhood. There are good people who live there. It's just somebody got there and couldn't control the kids. And we closed that house down, and thank you for remembering, Madam Mayor.
And I also want to thank you. I know that Storefront has a program that, when you talk about diversion for kids, this is a program that you are instrumental in terms of, property offenders and kids that shoplift and whatever. And that is a well-attended program, and I think it really sets kids on the right track. And I appreciate the fact that, that's a priority in your office.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Garcia, thank you. Let's be honest about it. Kids are kids. And, kids are going to do some stupid stuff. And we wish they only did stupid stuff at home so nobody else saw it, but sometimes they go outside it. But, as fine as our police force is, some of these things simply don't deserve to be in the criminal justice system. When I became county attorney again in 2007, we had 2,700 disorderly conducts from the school districts. That's preposterous. And what do we do with them? We divert most of them. I worked with the schools and said, send me your really bad cases and we'll do something about it. Don't send me this junk. And to their credit, last year we got 600 cases and we did something about those. Those are the ones we should deal with because, as I said, kids are going to be kids and they need to learn some consequences. But, as I said before, a lot of them don't have the luxury of a firm parent or parents. And that's what every kid deserves.
Well, and I also want to think, because I think you were also instrumental in when we were looking at some of these kids that are taking into prostitution and such, and the laws and everything that would prosecute them when they were the ones who were the victims. And I know you did some work on making that change happen. Thank you.
It doesn't make sense to prosecute young women under 18 who are forced into prostitution. They shouldn't be prosecuted. They should be nurtured and supported and helped to get out of it. Yeah. Let's get the pimps who are older than that. And some good legislation. Commissioner Gail Dorfman is trying to lead no wrong door, which means any door that the child, the young woman, enters into, be it the child welfare system, the criminal justice system, they deserve to be loved and nurtured and supported. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's an enlightened policy. And I give my credit to Ramsey County Attorney John Choi for leading the way on that. But thank you for recognizing it. I appreciate it.
Councilmember, any other questions? We look forward to your next update. Thank you. Thank you for coming. We have council discussion. Hats off to Hometown Hits. Councilmember Elliott, I haven't started with you for a while.
Well, thank you. I just want to suggest that a lot of the people took my advice and attended the open streets and didn't watch the Viking game. I want to thank everybody that was there. I want to thank the volunteers, the participants, the vendors, the citizens. And it was interesting this year at first blush when I was up by Lunds and walking down, going south down the hill. It didn't look as crowded until you get down to the south end of Penn Avenue and you realize that it didn't thin out. I think we had a tremendous turnout. I think everybody had a good time. It was great for the business owners, the community, the citizens, and I'm going to start and I'm going to engage everybody up here to help me to raise the funding to make sure that we put it on next year and the year after and continue well into the future.
Yes, exactly. It is a well-attended, wonderful event.
Right.
Councilmember Garcia?
Well, I just returned from a vacation from my hometown, had my 50th high school class reunion also. And, you know, when you come back to Minnesota from New Mexico and you come back to your hometown, you know this is God's country. Believe me. But I also want to thank the chief of police because I think, you know, he works in cooperation with all other law enforcement. And I think fine just doesn't describe what you do. I think it's a lot. It's very, very positive, and we appreciate you.
Councilmember Sandal?
Thank you. I'm going to ask Tom to put up a flyer. Our earlier study session this evening dealt with the intersection of 35W and 494, and the residents of Richfield will have the opportunity to hear the same information. There will be a meeting on Thursday, October 3rd from 4:30 to 6:30 at St. Richard's, located at 76th and Penn. And the topic is going to be the I-494 35W interchange layout development open house. And some interesting new ideas about where the stations will be in terms of the Orange Line, BRT line running down 35W, and how that will go through Richfield, possibly down Knox Avenue. South of 76th Street and under a tunnel potentially, and then up on the other side in Bloomington to the east of Southtown, which would be really good for Richfield residents, providing additional stops and access to city buses. So, and the BRT.
Councilmember?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two items. I want to say Penn Fest was a lot of fun this year. First time I've ever seen a guy run a 5K barefoot and be the winner.
Wow.
He did it in 20 minutes and 13 seconds, and I was just amazed. We're talking asphalt, and that street wasn't swept or anything, and I'm going, but it was interesting to watch, and then there were a lot of people, and I had fun at the kiddie parade, escorting them around their little parade that we had for them. It was a great time. It was, I think, like Pat said, it seemed to be more well-attended, more things. There was less gaps, you know, in the Penn Fest, so it was a lot of fun, and it was really fun to watch. The other thing I want to thank is really Public Works. Me and Maureen Nielsen were sitting up there looking at the roundabout area, and we noticed there was some dead plants there. And yeah, we'd had a pretty dry area in that. We found out, we called Public Works, and they were out immediately and found out the irrigation system wasn't working. Well, within a week, all of a sudden they'd replaced the plants and it's all green there again, and we got a lot of comments that somebody noticed and somebody took care of it. So I really want to thank them for jumping on it right away, because that is kind of our gateway to our city. Even though people may be trying to figure out how to navigate it, they might look at the plants once in a while. So, but I really appreciate how fast they did it and how well it turned out. So
Nice, that's nice to hear. Councilmember Sandal, you had one more item.
I did, I'm sorry. I had mentioned maybe I would be able to attend the Congress of Cities, which is in November, and I do not think I can. I took a look at my calendar schedule, and it is full, so I'm not going to be able to go.
Be without a dinner partner again, okay.
Well, I was thinking maybe I might be able to go.
Okay, well, let's look at it.
Yeah.
We were looking at
Absolutely.
opening 2 slots, so please, that would be fine. I just have one item, and actually, I thought somebody was going to be coming to the meeting, and they're not, and a board member. And I'm a board member of the Richfield Foundation, as several of our city staff are, and other people have served. You've served on the Richfield Foundation as
Yes.
well. So I just want to say, we're having a huge, big gala event. It's a wine tasting. We're partnering with the city. Bill Fillmore has garnered 17 wine vendors, over 100 wines to taste at this event. This is very reasonable. It's a $40 ticket. You can buy it at the liquor store. You can go online to the Richfield Foundation, or you can find a board member, I'm one, and buy a ticket to attend this event. There'll be lots of great hors d'oeuvres there. There'll be a wall of wine to bid on, and there'll be entertainment and music there. So I hope that this is a great community event. The Richfield Foundation is trying to focus more on community and brought this event that was sponsored by the Rotary at one time back to the community in the Richfield location. It's at the Woodlake Center. A lot of people know it as the BMO Bank Building, or where Houlihan's is. That's actually Woodlake Center too, next to Woodlake Nature Center, right? 66th and Lindale. I hope to see a lot of you there. I'm looking at the council approval of the agenda. However, I did have one item that was brought to my attention. There's somebody in the audience who would like us to look at item F, and this is a council discussion or decision to remove that, and considering to waive the fee for the St. Richard's Penn Avenue temporary sale intoxicating liquor license. Does anybody want to remove that and discuss it, or will we leave it on as it is? Council?
Let's remove it and discuss it.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so item F becomes item 5. May I give that to you, Edwina?
Okay?
Okay. So with that, I ask council approval of the agenda with item 4F moved to 5. May I
So
have a
moved.
Second?
Second?
Any other movements or discussion on the agenda?
Well,
All those-
Just a question, since we're doing item F, should item E also be considered for the same consideration then?
We can discuss both, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right, both of them. All right. Both of them, item 4E and 4F, will be moved to 5, so that's a friendly amendment. Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Acting City Manager, you get to read the consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council members. The consent calendar tonight contains now 8 items which would be acted upon by the City Council in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved, and no further council action on those items would be necessary. So tonight we have item A, consideration of the cancellation of a public hearing regarding a resolution authorizing the City of Richfield to seek a $200,000 Minnesota Investment Fund loan from the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development to assist Solera Corporation in locating in Richfield. Item B, consideration of the approval of the transfer of funds to close the 76th Street East Reconstruction Capital Project Fund. Item C, consideration of the approval of a grant agreement between the State of Minnesota, acting through the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and the City of Richfield for a Minnesota Investment Fund loan in the sum of $550,000, and a resolution authorizing the loan agreement between the City of Richfield and Endeavor Air Incorporated. Item D, consideration of the approval of a request by the American Legion at 6501 Portland Avenue for a temporary on-sale 3.2% malt liquor license for the Magicians Hockey Tent Party event scheduled on September 28, 2013. Items E and F have been removed from the consent calendar. Item G, consideration of the approval of the request by the Richfield Foundation for a temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license for their wine and cheese tasting event on October 10, 2013. Item H, consideration of the approval of a resolution authorizing the Department of Public Safety, Police, to become a member of the Minnesota Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, or the ICAC, and to receive federal funding from the Office of Justice Programs to assist in the prevention, interdiction, investigation, and prosecution of internet crimes against children, and technology-facilitated child exploitation. Item I, consideration of the approval of accepting and entering into a contract with Business Impact Group for program design and fulfillment for fire department uniform items. And finally, item J, consideration of the approval of a request by Champs Operating Corporation doing business as Champs Americana for a retail on-sale 3.2% malt liquor license to serve at Magicians hockey games in 2013. I'm presuming that's the 2013 season at the Richfield Ice Arena. And that concludes tonight's consent calendar.
I'll move the consent calendar.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Councilmember, you have 2 items under 5.
Okay, the first one is the consideration to sell for temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license for the Church of St. Peter located at 6730 Nicollet, and that is for their fall festival, which will take place in October. And also the consideration for the same on-sale intoxicating liquor license, temporary, for the Church of St. Richard's, which is at 7440 Penn Avenue. And so I think we have someone here that would like to speak to that issue.
Please keep your comments, please state your name, your address, and keep your comments to about 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Keith Rowan. I live at 9132 2nd Avenue South in Bloomington. I am the co-chair of the November Fest that is taking place on November 9th and 10th this year at the Church of St. Richard's in Richfield. And the reason that I'm basically here tonight is to ask the council to look at possibly waiving the liquor license fee, which last year was $129 and the year before was $125. I've been the co-chair with my wife the last couple years, and the main reason, there's a couple different reasons why we asked for this consideration. The first one was that I've been approached by other members of our church that had, in the past when we had done fall festivals, and had gotten approval from the council, I believe roughly about 10 years ago. Secondly, was that looking at the profits from this sale is basically kind of been cut in half. Give you an example, in 2011, we took in a net profit or a gross profit of $200 for those sales, but then with the liquor license fee of $125, we only had a net profit of $75. In 2012, we had $299.50 worth of gross profits, but then we had fees and expenses, in which one of them was the liquor license itself of $129. Total expenses were $165.98, which only gave us a profit of $133.52. And we are looked at as our church. It's a major fundraising event for our church to be able to raise this type of money, so that's why we're asking for this consideration.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe we could ask our police chief, Sandell.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and council members, I just got aware of this request just a couple minutes before the council meeting, so I made a quick phone call historically to see if I could get some historic perspective on this. According to best, he was correct. About 10 years ago, the council instituted the fees again. Prior to that, they were waiving them. I don't have any reason or know the knowledge why it happened 10 years ago, but as you see, you pulled off the other church, and we get several of these festivals at the churches every year, so it's a council decision whether they want to start waiving them for St. Richard's, or probably going to start getting the requests for all of them then.
Yeah, and all nonprofits.
I really don't have any problem waiving them. I'm wondering why you feel the necessity of offering beer and wine in the first place if that's all you're generating.
Well, it's just one of the things that we're doing. It's when we sell the beer and the wine, it's during our spaghetti dinner, which is one of the components of our fundraiser throughout the day. The event is made up of kind of a carnival atmosphere with crafts, craft sales. There's also kids games available to our parishioners and people in the community. There also is bingo that is available. That we also have a license that we request from Richfield that we are paying for. So it's like a one-day event that brings the community, not only the the people in the Richfield community, but surrounding areas, to our church to not only find out more about our church and our Catholic community and faith, but also just to enjoy the fun festival that we provide.
Are you required to provide at least a one-day, you got dram shop coverage for the service of the beer and alcohol, or the beer and wine?
I'm sorry, what?
Dram shops, the Civil Liability Act?
Yeah, I believe that is correct, we do.
It seems to
If
me
I
that
could weigh
probably
in on
costs
it,
about
they
3
do
times what
provide
you're paying for
insurance
license.
coverage.
Yeah, you know,
Beg
you
your
have to,
pardon?
you have
Yeah,
to for the license.
on the application, they are required to provide a copy of the insurance coverage.
Yep. So, and just going through that process, just recently with the Richfield Foundation, it takes a lot of staff time to do this. And if we do that, and we do this for all nonprofits, it starts to add up to a lot of staff time that, we have to think about with all the cuts we've made. We want to donate that, or if we want to do that for all nonprofits, and we should do it for everybody, not just
Well,
specifics.
Mary has a comment over here.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, Council, I just wanted to weigh in here a little. Chief Sendell is correct that ultimately it's a council decision, but I would just note that we don't have anything in our code right now that would allow for a waiver of the fee. And if it's the council's wish that we move in that direction, then I would say that you should direct staff to look at possible code amendment to provide for some criteria for waiving the fee going forward.
Councilmember
Well,
Garcia.
Madam Mayor, I would vote against waiving the fee. Because I think then we're gonna start a process where other nonprofits will want the same thing, and quite frankly, I think it's a matter of church and state, and I don't know, I just don't like the idea. And I think we need to have consistency, so I would vote against waiving the fee.
Councilmember Sando.
And I hate to say it, but I would too. And I'm a member of St. Richard's and grew up in St. Peter's. And I was on the council when things changed, and part of it had to do with, it does take staff time, and back then we were certainly worried about every nickel in the budget. And so part of it was, let's make things pay for themselves. If we have staff time to do a service, then there needs to be compensation for that. So that was part of the basis, and the other was saving the dollars. And the third one was the fairness issue. We certainly don't want to be in a position of deciding which organizations are worthy of a waiver and which are not. And I think that was part of what went into the decision, just not to do them anymore.
And that also assures us that they have the proper insurance for the event, which, you have to go out and get. So will you want to make a motion?
So I will make the motion that we do not waive the fee for St. Peter's or St. Richard's.
I'll second. Other discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay.
And if I can, we should actually pass the resolution that was
Yeah, we will.
Pre-
Yeah,
presented,
Do you want
yeah.
to read that, Councilmember?
Sure. They were for F and
E
G.
and F. E and F.
Oh, E and F, I'm sorry. I would move that we approve the request of the Church of St. Peter for a temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license for their annual fall festival scheduled to take place October 5th, 4th, 5th, and 6th, 2013. And I would also move, if we can do it at the same time, to approve the request by the Church of St. Richard for a temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license for their November Fest event scheduled to take place on November 9th and 10th, 2013.
Second.
Other discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And if I can, Your Honor, just one more comment, and that is I've attended both regularly for many, many years,
Same here.
and they're both a lot of fun, so it's a good event.
Bring more
Thank you,
friends.
Yeah,
Councilmember.
good
Thank
food,
you.
we'll try and support you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for your time.
And thank you for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yes, Madam Chair, Council, thank you for your time.
Councilmember Elliott.
Thank you, Your Honor. This item involves the consideration of a second reading amending the attached ordinance relating to the interest rate for internal loans from the city's permanent improvement revolving fund. Subsection 315.07, subdivision 3 of the Richfield City Code defines the disposition of funds within the permanent improvement revolving fund. Funds may be used only as directed by resolution of the city for the purposes of advancing to local improvement funds the costs of improvements for which assessments are to be levied and to provide interim financing of capital expenditures for projects of the city or the city's Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Whoever drafts the executive summaries has to know how to use periods and kind of break a sentence every once in a while, okay?
Must be the finance guy writing that
I
one.
gotta practice my breathing exercises. All funds provided must be paid back to the PIR fund with the interest at a rate of not less than 5% per annum. The amendment to the ordinance would allow the interest rate to be set by the city council at the time the funds are to be provided. Based on that summary, at this time, I would move to approve the second reading, amending an ordinance relating to the interest rate for internal loans from the city's Permanent Improvement Revolving Fund, amending subsection 315.07 of the Richfield City Code.
Second.
Other discussion? Staff, anything? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Councilmember Sandal.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is item 7, and it's the second reading of an ordinance relating to tobacco regulation. The electronic nicotine delivery systems, which are more commonly known as electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes, are gaining popularity. And e-cigarettes consist of battery-powered heating elements and replaceable cartridges that contain nicotine or other chemicals, and an atomizer that, when heated, converts the contents of the cartridge into a vapor which the user inhales. And there's some debate about the safety of these products, but until there's further scientific study, we won't know for sure what the outcome is. And although e-cigarettes are smokeless, they are subject to regulation as tobacco products. And therefore, cities may regulate them in the same way that they can regulate the sales of traditional tobacco products. So they can prohibit the sale to minors, which we certainly are going to do, and then also require that they be kept behind a counter in retail establishments, and we can subject the establishments that sell the products by requiring licensing and having compliance checks. So the current proposed ordinance amends the city's current tobacco regulations to include e-cigarettes as part of our normal tobacco sales, including licensing. And we did make one change. I had raised the question, what was lobelia? And we're not even talking about lobelia anymore. We're just talking about electronic cigarettes. And otherwise, there is no substantive change in the ordinance. That was just to make it more clear. So the proposed ordinance would also amend the codes to reduce the fine, which is associated with tobacco license violations, if the licensee appears before the city council as is required by the code. In addition, the ordinance gives the city council discretion to increase a suspension or fine if the licensee fails to comply with the suspension or the revocation notice. So we had the first reading of this matter on September 10th, 2013. And I will move that we approve the second reading for the ordinance relating to tobacco regulation of electronic cigarettes and establishing additional penalties for noncompliance, and that we secondly adopt a resolution approving the summary publication of the ordinance.
Second.
Discussion, council? I think this is a good thing. In fact, we've gotten some emails that's been very supportive and think we should even be tighter on this. So I think this is really good. I did want to follow up with a question too, because of some of the things that have been happening up north about synthetic drugs. Will we be taking that on in a future ordinance update as well?
Madam Mayor and council members, I believe we're going to let that go to the legislature and see what we can get action over on there.
Okay.
Minnesota chiefs have taken a position to see where the legislature will go with that. So.
Okay, that would be good too.
Yep.
I have one other comment, not directly related, but something that maybe we can send, that the council can send back to the, our Health Advisory Commission to take a look at. We recently ate in a restaurant in, it's either Edina or Bloomington, I'm not sure which side of the, it is. That was an outside patio, which they prohibited smoking because their local ordinance did if it was within so many feet of the door of the facility. And I don't know if we have that ordinance in our city or not, but it would be something I would be interested in seeing in play. Some of the nicest places to eat in the summer are outside on the patio, and I really don't like secondhand smoke.
And actually, they are outside. They are. And I noticed at Champs they are, so I know we don't have that ordinance.
Yeah,
That's-
so that would be something I would appreciate if the health advisory could take a look at and see what makes sense in our community.
Yeah, some restaurants don't allow it, but
So,
it's not an ordinance. That's a good observation. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item for consideration is a second reading amending the attached ordinance relating to, hold on, I think I got the wrong one, interest rates. I think I've got yours, Pat, sorry. We don't need to do that again. Get to the right page. This is a item for council consideration, a second reading of an ordinance relating to hoarding as a nuisance affecting public health. The city staff has seen a gradual increase in the number of hoarding or overcrowding situations in residential properties in the city. The proposed ordinance defines hoarding as a nuisance affecting public health. In addition to providing a clear definition, the ordinance gives staff an additional tool to address and remedy these situations by abatement, if necessary, for the health and welfare of the residents of the city. The background is the city's code currently does not define overcrowding or hoarding on residential property, nor does it provide explicit authority to address these situations by abatement. Fortunately, to date, the city staff has been able to cooperatively work with residents to deal with the instances that have arisen. After an annual review of potential code changes, the environmental health and code enforcement staff recommended adding language to the code that would provide clear direction. Also, defining hoarding as a nuisance would give staff the ability to intervene and abate the problem in the event that there was not full cooperation or if there was an immediate public health concern. And I'll make the motion to approve the second reading of the attached ordinance relating to hoarding as a nuisance affecting public health.
second.
Discussion?
I think we need to perhaps address the email we all received from the citizen.
And I was going to ask if our
Concerned
Attorney?
about the constitutional applications or prohibitions that may be affected by this ordinance. And a couple things I would suggest is, I'm relatively certain most everybody recalls there was a fire in St. Paul about 2 months ago involving a veteran. The veteran couldn't get out, the fire department couldn't get in because he had trash and hoarding piled up all over. It put the firemen at risk, it caused an unnecessary death. I've had cases involving hoarding, and if you haven't seen it or been exposed to it, you don't know how bad it is, and you don't understand the degree of difficulty it puts on public health, the fire department, public safety, the individuals that live there. And to say that what goes on in your own house does not constitute a danger to the public, whether it's the public safety officers, the fire department, or anybody that is in contact or in around the neighborhood, it does. And I don't think anybody intends to peek in windows or to try to identify anybody that suffers from a disability that leads to hoarding. But that doesn't mean neighbors can't be concerned. It doesn't mean that we won't get calls, and we need the ability to go in and abate that and help protect the people that apparently under some circumstances can't protect themselves, that leads to hoarding in the first place. I think this ordinance is absolutely necessary to protect the people and the public.
I think, in certain neighborhoods, we know that there are some individuals who are struggling with that.
Yes, very much.
And maybe our city attorney wants to talk to the specifics of just, your review.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I did review the email from the resident and looked at some of those concerns. As to the constitutionality, some of the issues that were raised by the resident related to unlawful searches under the Fourth Amendment. This ordinance really just defines the condition of the property as a public nuisance affecting health. It doesn't authorize illegal searches of private homes. In any particular situation, the police department or other inspectors would have to go through the proper process in order to get access to a home or to do an inspection of some kind. This ordinance simply just defines the condition and gives the city staff the tools to be able to address those situations in the event that they can get access to a home and confirm that those conditions do indeed exist.
Thank you. Comment?
And I'm sure Chief Sandell will agree, in my experience, where we find these, we already had legal access into the homes, either through a medical situation or an inspection where they may have done something as far as they need a permit and that. Or a lot of times it's coming from our public health people where a public health nurse goes there and they could say, I can't get in the door. So it's not that we're breaking down doors or we're looking through or we got special devices to see the hoarders. It's usually that we're sensitized to it because we're already there for some other reason, so.
That's good to hear. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Councilmember Garcia.
Okay, this is a second reading of an ordinance adopting lawn maintenance standards, allowing for maintained prairie vegetation and declaring noxious weeds and inadequately maintained vegetation to be a public nuisance. Now, we are going from traditional landscaping to other diverse types of landscaping, such as the establishment of prairie and meadow plant vegetation. And while these changes do have value and bring diversity and richness to our community, we've got to make sure that we protect the health and welfare of all residents. And such changes in vegetation must be properly managed and maintained, in the length of any transition period from traditional to non-traditional must be minimized. If left unaddressed, inadequate maintained vegetation can become aesthetically unpleasing and violate community standards. The proposed ordinance addresses these concerns by establishing maintenance standards and declaring noxious weeds and inadequately maintained vegetation to be a public nuisance. Doing so will give the city staff, the ability to address and abate conditions in the event that it becomes necessary. And I know that we did have an email from someone that also suggested that the city also check its own responsibility in terms of the landscaping around the community, and that we enforce our own landscaping ordinance. So I agree with that. We just so I don't know if there's any discussion. So I will make the motion to approve the second reading of the attached ordinance related to lawn maintenance and prairie vegetation and declaring noxious weeds and inadequately maintained vegetation a public nuisance, plus adopt a resolution approving its summary publication of the ordinance.
Second. Discussion, Council?
No.
All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 10 is a contract from the City of Edina to provide dispatching services to the City of Richfield's police and fire departments. On August 13th, 2013, the City Council voted to move our dispatching operations to the City of Edina. The City of Edina will provide contractual dispatching services for the police and fire departments. The contract between Edina and Richfield covers dispatching services, operations, and maintenance of the Edina Communication Center. The contract period is a 4-year contract and will commence on December 1st, 2013. The contract includes a standard cost escalator for each year of the contract. The escalator will be based on the increased labor costs for operations of the ECC under Edina's labor agreements, and the rate of the increase, if any, over the previous year in the implicit price deflator for government consumption expenditures and gross investments for the state and local governments prepared by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. This time I'll make a motion to approve the contract between the City of Edina and the City of Richfield to provide dispatching services for the police and fire departments.
Second.
Other discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Councilmember Fitzhenry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item number 11 is consideration of a major amendment to the approved Cedar Point Commons planned unit development, final development plan, and conditional use permit that would allow construction of a McDonald's restaurant at the northwest corner of 66th Street and Richfield Parkway. Bryan Companies, the owner of the land occupied by the Cedar Point Commons development and the vacant parcels across the street, has applied for a major amendment to their approved planned unit development. The amendment requests permission to reconfigure the vacant parcels west of Richfield Parkway for the construction of a McDonald's restaurant. The proposed restaurant would occupy the southern half of the vacant lot. The northern half would remain vacant for the time being. Staff has reviewed the proposed plans for compliance with code requirements and the existing PUD. The Planning Commission has reviewed the proposal and considered its agreement with both technical requirements and the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan and the Cedar Avenue Corridor Master Plan. While the PUDs offer flexibility in the application of technical requirements, they are intended to do so in the interest of more efficient land use, superior design, and greater benefit to the community that could have been offered otherwise, based on concerns regarding parking, pedestrian safety, and the findings that it does not meet the goals and objectives of the originally approved plan unit development, the Cedar Avenue Master Plan, and the Comprehensive Plan. The Planning Commission is recommending denial for the proposed plan. I don't know if staff wants to comment on this before I go ahead and make the motion, or?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I would just add that this did go to the Planning Commission once before. There was a great deal of concern about the orientation of the building. At the time, it did not have a primary entrance on either 66th Street or Richfield Parkway. So it kind of had its back turned to those streets. And the feeling among staff, and I believe the Planning Commission as well, was that the materials that were being proposed were not in keeping with the materials at the rest of Cedar Point, both in terms of quality and aesthetics. To their credit, McDonald's addressed those two items very well, in staff's opinion. They did change the orientation of the building so that it does have entrances on both, I believe both 66th Street and Richfield Parkway. And the materials have been greatly enhanced that are being proposed, and we feel like they are at least an adequate match with what's out there. Every prototypical kind of user is going to have their own colors, their own designs, but those aside, we do feel like it's a good match. The recommendation that's before you is a reflection of the Planning Commission's recommendation. They are an advisory board to you. That's their advice. When this did go to the Planning Commission from staff, it was a rare occasion in which it went there without a firm recommendation one way or the other. On kind of technical merits, there are some issues, and maybe I'll let Melissa just touch on some of the technical issues, and then I'll get back to the bigger picture things.
If I may, John, real quick, so are you telling me that the September 9th city planning, or the Planning Commission's public hearing, staff had no recommendation one way or the other?
That's correct. Our recommendation was that there were some technical issues, and again, Melissa can touch on those, that were not in, that staff wasn't necessarily comfortable with. Those in and of themselves, I don't believe would have merited denial, but there's the bigger issue of whether the proposed plan is in conformance with the Cedar Corridor Master Plan that was done in 2003, I believe, with the comprehensive plan, and whether the departure from the existing PUD was in the best interest of the community. And those are really policy level decisions. They're not technical decisions for staff to make. and that's what we shared with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission ultimately voted 4-3 against, to recommend denial, based on the main things were the parking didn't meet city requirements, and the finding that the proposed plan did not meet the goals and objectives of the original PUD, the Cedar Avenue Master Plan, and the comp plan.
I think what I'll do, Madam Mayor, is move the item so we can have further discussion. So by motion that we approve the attached resolution denying an amendment to the planned unit development, final development plan, and the conditional use permit for Cedar Point Commons.
I'll second. And did we have further comments from staff?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'll touch on those technical issues, and then I just wanted to expand a little bit on the Planning Commission's findings that Director Stark spoke of. The technical issues that the development does not meet, the first one is that any component of a drive-through must be 150 feet from any residential parcel, that's residentially zoned parcel. A portion of the church parcel to the west is zoned residential, and in order for McDonald's to turn the building so that the orientation was toward 66th Street and Richfield Parkway, that the drive-through is pushed closer to the residential areas. In terms of residential uses, the drive-through components are far enough. They're more than 150 feet, but for residentially zoned property, it's only 65 feet. In terms of parking, they're approximately 20% below what our required parking standard is. However, their parking reduction is supported by the Institute of Transportation Engineers study. They do meet it in terms of that, and historically, staff has agreed with studies of this kind, studies that are supported both by the prolific nature of McDonald's or someone like Taco Bell, someone who has a lot of experience in this region and knows their parking requirements. And additionally, like I said, this is supported by the ITE manual. One of our major concerns is delivery truck traffic and garbage traffic, and that also comes into play with the parking requirements. You'll see in your packet, there is an illustration of how trucks will maneuver throughout the site. And you'll see that there are some parking stalls, both with the smaller delivery truck that they have moved to based on our suggestion, and for waste hauling trucks. There are going to be some stalls that there absolutely cannot be a car parked in that stall if this truck will successfully maneuver. And even perfectly driven, you can see that this is very tight.
Yeah.
One alternative would be to limit hours so that there is a time when the restaurant is actually closed, so that trucks would have the ability to get in and circulate throughout the site without the possibility of customer cars being parked in those locations. There are some minor issues about landscaping, which I'm confident we could work through with McDonald's. There's also an issue with site lighting. The current lighting is above our ordinance requirements. It's above historical tolerances for variations in lighting, and it's also above what was required by the final PUD resolution for Cedar Point. And then just a little bit on the Planning Commission's findings. The way that the findings are actually written in your resolution, what they found was that the proposal did not add to the diversity of uses within the city, and that a fast food restaurant serving over 50% of its customers via drive-through service was not responsive to the context of this development, being that it's on a greenway, it's on the Cedar Avenue corridor master plan emphasizes walkability, and this use was not compatible with that. They also looked at the the orientation of the drive-through throughout the site and where the parking is located relative to that, and the idea that anyone coming who's planning to eat at this restaurant, almost anyone, will have to cross a drive-through lane to get to an entry. And in McDonald's defense, there's really no other way to set up this site. other than to do that. But the Planning Commission had concerns about a walkable development that forced any patrons who are going to come and eat at the restaurant to cross that traffic, especially for a restaurant where almost 70% of the traffic is going to be through the drive-through, and so maybe maybe they wouldn't be paying as much attention to folks who would be walking through that parking lot. Another requirement of planned unit developments is that they form a united and a unified development in and of themselves. And the idea there that the Planning Commission found was this delivery traffic and the parking with the delivery was just in conflict and was going to make things very difficult on this site. That's all from staff. If John wanted to go back to his items.
No, Madam Mayor and council members, I believe that City Planner Paleman really covered all the issues very well. Thank you.
I seconded the motion, so I'll caveat that I certainly watch the Planning Commission, and this is a tough decision because we really want development over there, and we really like to see redevelopment going. And I think from the HRA meeting, we know that there's redevelopment going there. We're going to get a beautiful housing project, I hope, moving forward. But I happen to agree with the Planning Commission that it probably does not meet the goals and objectives of the original approved PUD. And there was a lot of people and a lot of community input about what they wanted there, and I want to give those people what they want. Their voices are concerned. They waited a long time for some of the changes that are happening here, so I will support the motion as it's already been seconded.
If I may, Your Honor.
Councilman.
What bothers me is, in the 5 years I've been on the city council, we've worked with staff and raged at staff saying we need to be more user-friendly, and we need to be upfront with the developers and people coming in and lay the plan on the table. None of these objections were raised at that first meeting. And yet they made them go out and redo the plans, put a lot of money and time into it, coming in knowing full well they were going to reject it. We didn't have the courtesy of saying, you know what, this isn't what we want here at that first meeting. We let McDonald's go out and put time, effort, and money into it to come back in, and as staff said, met most of all the objections. There's some technicalities that from my perspective are nothing but fluff. And so what I'm going to suggest, whether it's us or a planning commission or anybody else, if you're not going to accept it, don't play these people along. Don't send them back out and spend money coming in knowing full well you're going to reject their proposal. That offends me, and it should offend McDonald's the way they were treated. And so I'm going to stay with the planning commission, but it offends me how this was handled from the get-go. They knew when they were there the first time making that presentation and said they were going to make them come back, and they should have told them then, look, here's what we're going to do because, and this is going to be our reasoning. They knew it then, and they just use it this time to kick them back out. Yeah, and it offends me.
You know, and I believe there's probably somebody here from McDonald's, and I just want to say this is nothing against McDonald's because I'm a patron and I bring my grandchildren, and they're a good community player. And I think somewhere in Richfield we might have another McDonald's, but yeah, it's not going to be in this. I don't believe I would support this location. Councilmember.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And as I've attended many conversations with Mount Calvary and the people in the area, and they do agree that it's just the wrong spot. It's not where McDonald's wants to go. It's just a spot they picked to put it in. And if you listen to the people over there, what they're really interested in is getting a sit-down restaurant in there like we used to have. You know, and we used to have community groups sit down and have meals at a sit-down restaurant. And we talked, you know, through names out like Cracker Barrel and things like that, what we'd like to see in the area. And the thing that would bother me if McDonald's went there, we basically took everything out of play because of all the land use changes we're going to have there. We got no space to put anything else in there. Not that it has to go there and that, but the people really want to see somewhere where we can go, like it used to be King Oscar's, and some of the others, where the community actually goes in and actually, you know, has conversations, solve all the city problems over coffee, whatever it may be. But that's what we were kind of looking in this area, and that's what I'd like to see go in. No, nothing against McDonald's. Like I said, you know I go there every morning too. So.
No, you do. I do too. I like their coffee. Councilmember?
I'm torn. I can certainly appreciate the pedestrian issues with every person who enters the building has to go through the drive-through aisle or cross it to get to the building. That would be of concern to me. I do appreciate that McDonald's went back and tried to resolve the issue. They turned the building around. I think that's a plus. And I have not spoken with the neighbors of late to know where they stand or what they're interested in. My biggest concern is this site has been vacant now for 7 years, and no guarantees of getting something else in the near future. So I would probably support McDonald's because at this point we have no alternative after 7 years.
Any other discussion? I'll call the question then. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
3-2 passes. Councilmember Fitzhenry, you have the next item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is to conduct a public hearing to consider a revised plat for the area at northwest corner of 66th Street and Richfield Parkway. I'm probably going to have staff weigh in since we made an earlier decision on this, where this is going to go, but in conjunction with their application requesting a major amendment to approve Cedar Point Commons planned unit development, Ryan Companies is requesting to replat the current vacant lot at the northwest corner of 66th Street and Richfield Parkway. In essence, this replat would amend property lines for Ryan to deed the property to McDonald's and would also recommend the property need for the proposed Three Rivers Park District Trail. It does state on this, if the City Council votes to deny the request of the amendment, the plat request should also be denied, given that the plot approval is dependent on the review of the proposed building site and utility plans. So I'm going to ask for staff input on this, on going forward with this public meeting or public hearing.
Right, it is a public hearing, so you will have to open and close the public hearing. But in terms of plat approval, the requirements for plat approval in the city code require that you review the building siting, the building utilities, all of those things that come forward with any other PUD application or site plan application. Given that you have denied the site plan, you can't review plans for this new plat. So you're obligated to deny.
Okay, so this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to come forward to speak to this? You could come to the mic. You have about approximately 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address and sign in before you leave.
Madam Mayor and Council, my name is Mark Kampmeyer. I'm with Ryan Companies, the applicant. I had a longer presentation, but I feel like I need to make it pretty short now. I think what I should do is my name again is Mark Kampmeyer. I'm with Ryan Companies. My address is 1 Horseshoe Lane, Sunfish Lake, Minnesota. My role with Ryan Companies is to work with developers a developer will find a site and secure anchor tenants, large format anchor tenants, Target, Home Depot, etc. After that, they come to me looking for, what are we going to fill up the rest of this development with? What are we going to do? 90% of the time, it's developed in a couple of different phases. First phase is generally the large format anchors and as much retail as we can get committed at the time of development. The second portion is phase 2, which is outlined, and it's the subject of our discussion tonight. A couple of things have happened that have been pretty dramatic. The economy, first of all, has tanked and changed a lot of activity that retailers are up to. So as far as the buildings that you see on the site plan that were submitted in 2006, the first two say food/retail. Right now, for us to build those buildings economically makes absolutely no sense. We have, up until about 6 months ago, 16,000 square feet of vacant space in the shopping center itself. And this would be small shop space, which is space in between Target and Home Depot, which is inline, and then small shop space comprised in the other buildings. That space was vacant for approximately 6 years. Due to some very good work on behalf of our brokers, and me going to management asking for reduced rental rates and increased incentive packages to tenants, we've secured 3 new tenants for a total of 8,400 square feet Anytime Fitness, and 2 food users, which are the most active retailers in this market at this time, given what's going on in the economy. The second most important, well, the second and probably the most important is the economics of developing these buildings. Rents in the marketplace right now and for the foreseeable future will not support constructing 4 individual small retail buildings. This will be vacant for quite a while. Given the fact that we've even got space still available in the shopping center now, and we're just gaining momentum with the new 3 leases we've signed, people are voting for food with their dollars. Chipotle, who's been in the center for a while, is exceeding all sales expectations. Papa Murphy's opened very strong. Again, the food dollar is speaking. Noodles, another one that opened very, very strong. The idea is that when times change, the economy changes, the landscape changes. Everyone knows, everyone's heard that with eat retailing and with the economy and with just changes in consumer patterns, generally speaking, the ability for me to build what I'm trying to build here, it doesn't make sense anymore. When we designed a second phase, we made predictions or assumptions about the future that are no longer true. We don't want to put in something that the city doesn't want. McDonald's, we feel, is a good use. They're self-contained. The traffic patterns and the delivery systems, they're well acquainted with. They can probably speak much better to this than I can. As far as how the parking is situated and how the parking works, it's very much the same as the rest of the development. We have an operation easement agreement with Target and Home Depot that everyone knows about. Those agreements require all kinds of different requirements that are placed on us for parking. These were governed the rest of the shopping center, which the city was kind enough to lower your parking ratios in order to meet. So the balance of the shopping center operates under a less stringent parking policy, and McDonald's, I think, is certainly capable to determine about their delivering and the parking. So I guess for me, the most important thing to tell you is that things have fundamentally changed, and they're not going back to where they were. I would love to be able to deliver 4 buildings that were in compliance with everything that was submitted, but the reality is it's not going to happen based on economies right now. And I'd also like to point out finally that we do have a restaurant pad. That restaurant pad is at the corner of 66th and Cedar. That's the hard restaurant, or the hard corner, excuse me. And that's where we fully intend to try and get a sit-down restaurant. I've got one of the preeminent retail brokers in the Twin Cities that has been working on this project for 6 years. We don't sit on our hands. We market. We've left no stone unturned. And he represents a lot of these tenants that are food tenants right now that are active. And so I'd like to ask him to speak for a couple of minutes about this project, the difficulties we've encountered, and the changes in the retail landscape we've seen in the last few years that really point to the need for change, the need for understanding, the need for flexibility on this project.
Okay, this is a public hearing. The next one person can please come forward. Please sign in before you leave. Please state your name and your address when you come forward.
Hello, Mrs. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Chris Simmons with Welsh Companies. I'm based in Minneapolis. I am a commercial real estate broker focusing on retail. I've worked on this project for approximately 7 years with Mark Kampmeyer and Ryan Companies. I have done most of the small shop leasing, and I've brought some of the tenants to you. What I wanted to focus you tonight was what Cedar Point Commons is, and the good things, and then the not so good things, and why we've had some difficulty in attracting businesses here over the last few years. To my left here, and hopefully you can see it on the monitor, is what we call a regional trade area map for the Minneapolis-St. Paul MSA, Minnesota Statistical Area. What that means is, in those dots out there, and I'll try to move it around a little bit, they represent a lot of the shopping center districts in and around the Twin Cities. So you're probably familiar with Southdale and Rosedale and Ridgedale and Woodbury and Arbor Lakes and Maple Grove. Those are considered regional trade areas. Regional trade areas are approximately 1.5 million and above of retail. That's where you're going to see the Walmarts and Best Buys and a lot of restaurants congregate. They're typically around interstates, 494 or 694. The next thing you'll see in terms of dots, I know it doesn't show up very well on your map there, are community shopping center areas. And community shopping center areas are like Knollwood Mall area, so they'll have maybe a smaller mall along with Targets, Walmarts, and some big box retailers around there. Another example of a community shopping center area would be Egan and Apple Valley. So you might have a little bit less than 1.5 million square feet of retail. But what these two different large areas of retail do is they pull. And when I say pull, when you're going and doing your shopping at Christmas or after Thanksgiving, you're going to go to these areas to shop. You're doing your daily needs in what we call neighborhood trade areas. And those are not represented on this map, but that's what Cedar Point Commons is. That's what Highland Park is and 50th and France. So they're very nice areas, but they don't have the pull. The pull you have is from the neighborhood or the surrounding community. So what we've been doing is marketing this, and it's a very successful Target. It's a very successful Home Depot too. But what we do have is the reality is the airport is just to the east of us, which creates a funnel for the neighborhood. But the people that are coming and shopping at Cedar Point and getting their groceries at Target and going and getting their lumber and nails at Home Depot are people that live in the Richfield and South Minneapolis primarily. So the trade area is a lot smaller than, say, Southdale or Ridgedale, where they're coming from 3 or 4 cities around. So when you're a retailer looking at this market, like Chipotle and Noodles, and I am the Chipotle broker for Minnesota. I'm also the Noodles broker for Minnesota. So I do all the stores in Minnesota. I also used to be the Caribou Coffee broker for Minnesota, and we did 200 of them. But to give you an idea, Cedar Point Commons has been on the books since around 2002, I think 2003, you guys did the PUD, but we didn't become a tenant of Ryan Companies until approximately 2011. Why is that? Because we typically and have a pecking order of what we look for, and because just thinking about like a bee in a beehive, there's more bees around regional and community shopping center areas. So there's more people, so there's more ways to generate income, okay? So we're in a neighborhood shopping center area where really we have only probably 2/3 of the trade area because of the airport. So what we do and what we have to do is market on the success of Target and Home Depot. So we were able to get Chipotle in, and Chipotle's done really well, and so we're getting people from the guard bases and Air National Guard and reserve bases coming over for lunch. We're getting the workers from the airport coming over for lunch, and Chipotle is above average. And so what we're using to do to market this is to say, hey, this is a good location, not only for Papa John's and Target and Anytime Fitness and Home Depot, but also Chipotle. But on top of that, the Noodles folks heard that Chipotle and Caribou were doing well. And so in retail, it's a herd mentality. And what I'm trying to kind of portray to the members of the council here is McDonald's is a very important part if you ever want to get a restaurant. And the reason being is you got to come to grips with the reality this is a neighborhood shopping center area. And think about 50th in France and think about, say, Highland Park. And there is a few restaurants, but it's not like Southdale and it's not like Maple Grove or Eden Prairie, these super regional trade areas or Mall of America. And then come to the grips of looking at it on a map and saying, okay, we're kind of in the middle of these areas and our trade area isn't big, so what are we going to be at Cedar Point? We have gone to every national restaurant and even local restaurants, and because either of economics or the downturn in this economy, you haven't seen a lot of restaurants going around. I would ask you to think about Southdale and you look around and say, okay, Tavern on France came in and took over the old Ruby Tuesdays. And you saw Maggiano's come in, and then you had a steak and ale turned into Cowboy Jack's. But in terms of new restaurants being built, they're far and few between. And I also represent other developers, Opus, and I also represent CSM, the other developers in town. So I do all the stuff in Maple Grove and also in Woodbury. And it's really, really, really hard to find sit-down restaurants now, even in these regional trade areas. So what do we do to market and how do we get people excited about it? And I go back to Mark Hantmeyer's site plan here, and the best restaurant spot that the city of Richfield has in this area or that Ryan Companies has to offer is this corner. You know, when I say this corner, it's right at Cedar and 77. Ryan Companies is not asking you to put McDonald's on that corner. Ryan Companies is asking you to put McDonald's on the inboard corner because they know that that restaurant position is very near and dear to your hearts. And so I guess to kind of finalize my little talk is not only a retail expert that represents Chipotle Noodles and Caribou that's done well here and also worked with Ryan Companies and have talked to all these restaurants out there and said it's a tweener location is McDonald's is considered the gold standard. Target's considered the gold standard out there in terms of retail and general merchandise. Home Depot in terms of, nails and lumber. Caribou Coffee in Minnesota is the gold standard of coffee. Okay, they're Minnesota-based. Chipotle is by far the gold standard. So you are getting gold standards to the city. And McDonald's is, I believe, and I will not talk on their behalf because we do have Trish here to talk about the architecture and aesthetics and how it designs into the PUD. But McDonald's will help us lease the remaining vacancies. And we do have 4 vacancies out there still. And, but we like the addition. When I say we, I believe the neighborhood in the city likes the addition of Noodles and Chipotle, because in retail, like Mark Kampmeyer said, you vote for your pocketbook. And those retailers are bringing in lots of families, and those restaurants are doing really well right now in your city. So we'll continue to do it, but I would ask you to consider McDonald's too as somebody that's going to revalidate the location like Chipotle does in Target. And we do have the opportunity to do another restaurant or 2 here in the future.
I need to get to other folks, please.
Okay.
This is a
Thank you.
public meeting. Thank you.
I appreciate all of your inputs. Both of you, I wish you had spoken earlier.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you for your time. My name is Chris Grote. I'm with the law firm of Lindquist and Venom. I'm McDonald's legal counsel. If I think what just happened here, and that this council, without public hearing, voted on matter 11 without any input from McDonald's, without any input from Ryan, and without any input from anybody else in this community on matter number 11 before you today with regard to the proposed amendment for the McDonald's, I think it was improper and unlawful. And I think this board should immediately revisit that issue, and it should seek input from its city attorney as to the impropriety of what the panel just did in voting on the proposal without any public input whatsoever at this hearing. One of the council members just mentioned that it would have been nice to hear from a couple of our speakers before the vote occurred. That's what they're here to do, to provide you the input at this public hearing. But they've been wrongfully or unfairly denied that opportunity at this time. And I just wanted to make that as part of the record. The other thing I wanted to do this evening is to talk a little bit about what happened at Planning Commission. And, McDonald's doesn't take any pleasure in this. What we wanted to do is to provide this panel with a fair and objective view of what this development is, and then the panel could take an independent view of the development and take all of this extremely valuable input to some of the issues that you were all talking about, and then take a fresh look at this and consider it. It seems to me clear that this board, this panel, has relied on the 4-3 vote of the Planning Commission. I want to take a look at that vote of the Planning Commission and put what really happened on planning in the record. The staff report that you have for your review said that on page 2, based on concerns regarding parking, pedestrian safety, findings that it did not meet the goals and objectives of the originally approved PUD, the Cedar Avenue Master Plan, the Comprehensive Plan, the Planning Commission has recommended denial 4-3 of the proposed plan. That's simply not what happened. And Madam Mayor, you said you viewed the tape. So I think anybody viewing the tape would understand exactly what happened at planning. The single reason for denial stated on the record by 3 of the 4 dissenting members of the Planning Commission was their feeling that, quote, we can do better than a McDonald's. That was their single reason. None of the other stuff that's sitting in the report. That's not what they talked about. That's not what they considered. Pedestrian travel was considered by somebody who voted for the development. And with regard to that notion about pedestrian crosswalks and the like, I would just offer the observation, anybody walking into a Target walks across a traffic lane right at the front of a Target. Anybody walking into a Home Depot walks across the traffic lane right in front of the Home Depot and where they pick up lumber, timber, and the like, just the Home Depot drive-through window. Walking across traffic serving the building isn't inconsistent or something that doesn't happen at virtually every site. But back to the we can do better vote. And I strongly think that council should talk to its city attorney about this, because the notion that we can do better than a McDonald's isn't an objective standard on which a panel can make a lawful and proper ruling. If it doesn't meet ordinances, okay, that's one thing. But goals and aspirations and the like.
Can we have other people for the public hearing? This is a public hearing. I like when you speak, but I would like to have time for other folks as well.
Thank you. Then I'll just wrap up shortly. So I think if council wants to proceed in this fashion, I would strongly recommend that it withdraw its initial vote, its earlier vote, it seek advice from its city attorney as to the propriety of denying McDonald's public comment on item number 11 on the agenda, which was the design of the building itself. And we respectfully request that after review about city, that we revisit the issue and you provide McDonald's a proper hearing. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Would others like to come forward to speak?
Madam Mayor, council members, my name's Trish Rothy, and I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates, the civil engineer working with McDonald's on this project. I wanted to just talk really quick about some of the technical aspects. Staff did a good job summarizing them. I do want to point out, we were obviously at Planning Commission earlier this summer with a plan, as John mentioned. And both city staff and commission members had a lot of good comments on it. So we went back to the drawing board. We did everything we could within the physical site constraints to address all of the comments, flipping the building, enhancing the architecture, improving internal circulation and queuing space for the drive-through. They had concerns about intersection level of service and parking lot landscaping. We've addressed all of those concerns. We've done everything within the physical site constraints we can. And even with less physical space, as we now are working with Three Rivers Park District and the city to dedicate a trail, as you know, that will go up Richfield Parkway. And as for the remaining technical aspects, I'm kind of just going to reiterate these and emphasize them. The 150-foot setback from a residential property, we are greater. We're actually about 300 feet from a residentially used property. The residentially zoned properties, the church property, it has an overlay, a special use overlay on it. As far as parking is concerned, the city code does require a particularly high number of stalls at 60 stalls for this size of a building. We're showing 47. The ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers Manual, McDonald's historical usage for parking, the OEA, even just general industry standard, all have a much lower parking standard of what would actually be utilized. And furthermore, there's such an emphasis on the pedestrian bike-friendly aspect to this development, which a larger parking lot is just going to negate, that pedestrian bicycle-friendly atmosphere. It's basically just responsible building and green building, not to overdevelop your property. It's not a good use of space if your facilities are not going to be utilized. And as for the concern with delivery traffic, although this is not an ordinance-specific concern, McDonald's has agreed to reduce the size of the delivery truck from what typically would be delivering at a standard McDonald's. And furthermore, if you look at any small site, any restaurant site in town, out of town, the same occurrence happens with, trucks having to drive over some parking stalls. Operationally, McDonald's has tens of thousands of stores across the country and worldwide, and if it didn't work for them operationally, we wouldn't be here proposing this site in front of you. So we will work with the city as far as potential hour restrictions or whatnot, but I just want to try and get you comfortable with the fact that that's not going to impact the store operationally. And then the last couple things, as Melissa mentioned, the parking lot, island landscaping, lighting plan. Those are items that we can definitely address to meet code requirements. The last 3 items that were in your staff report. And to reiterate what else was just said about the traffic, pedestrian traffic crossing a drive-through lane, I think this happens at almost every retail site that you're going to be at. That majority of the traffic is going to go drive in front of the building or one main drive aisle, and you're going to have pedestrians crossing it. And just to point out too that the drive-through lane is in the back of the building on the west side of the site, so it's just a regular drive aisle that some of the clientele for McDonald's would be crossing. So that's just a couple minutes on the technical side of the site plan, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
This is a public hearing, so is there anyone else who would like to come forward? Please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Sean Hayford O'Leary. I live at 7229 2nd Avenue South. I basically just want to say I think you should stick to your guns. I think you made the right decision earlier tonight. I thought it was interesting, particularly what the attorney said about the idea that the Planning Commission's vote was based on the idea that we can do better than a McDonald's. And I don't know if Richfield can do better than a McDonald's as a restaurant, but they can definitely do better than this kind of development, because this is a site plan from the 1970s. I mean, it's terrible for pedestrians and bicycles, especially in this site right next to the inner city trail. I think the high drive-through rate is going to really harm that trail. And I think we would be happy to have McDonald's if McDonald's were complying with what the community has articulated that they want there. I think the mayor said it really well, that this just isn't what they want. And the idea that we're promised that someday we could get a sit-down restaurant by a freeway off-ramp and instead have this drive-through restaurant on this great new parkway seems very perverse to me. So I think you've made the right decision. I think you should stick to it. I think this would be a very bad first impression for people entering Richfield. I appreciate that they've made some changes, but the fundamental issues are still there. Pedestrians still have to cross driving aisles to get in, and it's simply not what was envisioned by the community. And I think you've made the right decision, and I hope you stick to it. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Would anyone else like to come forward to speak?
Mayor, Council, I'm Dwayne Helm. I'm a member of Mount Calvary Lutheran Church and School. I've been a member since 1967 and served in many capacities, elected capacities of the congregation, its leadership. And over the last 15 years, I guess, or better possibly, I've been kind of the person that's been put in charge of overseeing our facilities. And we've seen a lot happen, of course, in the recent years, and have to say that when the Cedar Point development came about, that created a lot in the way of change for us, and some of our planning for the future that we had was set aside and had to be adjusted. But working with Ryan companies and as well as the city planners, it went very, very nicely, and we have a lot of respect for both the organizations and what they have to say and come to an understanding on it. back in July of 2010, we were paid a visit by a real estate representative of McDonald's. Actually, the visit came by way of an individual, Mr. Brian Smith, I believe it was, that came to our church office and visited with our administrative assistant and left with her a layout, a plan of what was being proposed to go into the Phase 2 development. And we're, of course, adjacent to that whole Phase 2 for the full length of the block between 65th and 66th. And the developer, at the time that was all constructed, did put, a 10-foot high double surface fence that runs the full length of the block up to our parking lot on the south end. At that point, it starts with a wrought iron fence and to surround our parking area. But that was kind of the first indications that something more was to happen, or something would be happening that would be indifferent to what was originally proposed with the original plans. We have been waiting with great anticipation and high hopes that the development would have been as originally planned, and certainly we understand the circumstances that have brought some changes to all of that. But it was to be 4 buildings in there, smaller retail operations, maybe even some professional tenants or whatever. So we didn't see much that would be, that we would be opposed to. I did, though, over the last 3 years, go to our church council on 3 different occasions to learn from them as to what their thoughts would be to a McDonald's be located right next door to us. And the first preliminary plan that we saw had a drive-up stacking lane that actually ran right alongside the fence. And we have operated a Christian day school there for 65 years and have recently closed that down 3 years ago, but we still continue with a preschool operation, a relatively successful preschool operation. And the playground for those children are just on the other side of that fence. Our big concern was exhaust fumes, fumes from a restaurant, the traffic, the lighting, just a number of things. And it was in July, or April, I guess it was, of 2011, I'd written a letter to the mayor and Councilman Member Fitzhenry, just to indicate what some of our concerns were at that time, and frankly, they're still concerns today. And we just cannot come to accept the idea of having an operation such as a McDonald's located that close to our children. And we did just this past June lease the second and third story, third floor to a charter high school. And they're operational there now and so forth. So it's not that we've got a vacant building sitting there at this time by any means. And we've entered into a 5-year lease with anticipation of a couple 5-year renewals as well. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Would anyone else like to come forward to speak?
Good evening. My name is Anthony Thompson. I represent McDonald's Corporation, and I appreciate all of the input that we've heard here this evening from the staff, from Madam Mayor, the council members, those fine professionals that we've established here and brought to help represent our development. I just have to say this. We opened this, or you opened this session this evening, pledging allegiance to the flag, and for you all to have denied us an opportunity to speak on item number 11 was extremely disappointing and disheartening. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to come forward to speak on this matter?
Good evening, Mayor and Councilwomen. My name is Doug Olson. I live at 6608 Clinton Avenue in Richfield. I'm here to speak in support of the Planning Commission's action recommending a denial of the replatting. I'd like to mention I happen to work in the Cedar Point area. I had relatives who used to have homes that were here. I think it's a real improvement, and I think one of the facts that wasn't mentioned tonight with regard to Target and Home Depot is that this is the 12th busiest Target in the United States. I don't think that can be said for a lot of the other Targets, even in the metro area. It draws a lot of people. The Home Depot itself is actually, in annual sales, is over twice what it was originally projected. And I think that's a factor that this is growing here. And I would also like to add that the Richfield Parkway connection to Bloomington will be done within 2 months. And I think you're going to see a dramatic increase in the traffic and the customers that service this area. I think that the parcel that is adjacent to the school is going to be much more marketable than it has been. As someone that has worked in the Cedar Point area, businesses within the last 6 years, almost since it was opened, I think it's fair to say that for the first couple of years when the economy was down, we were always told that there was not a conscious effort to develop this side of the Richfield Parkway until a certain percentage of the businesses on the other side were rented. So it's not been that there's been an active effort since day one to market those parcels. At least that's what we were told. If that's incorrect, I guess we were given incorrect information. I'm opposed to the McDonald's being located there primarily because I think it's inconsistent with what was originally planned for the plan unit development. And I think some deference should be given to that document as well as the master plan, the comprehensive master plan for the city. I think clearly there are impacts on adjacent property owners that need to be taken into consideration. And I know it's not an easy issue. I'm not opposed to McDonald's itself. I think McDonald's is in many ways an admirable corporation. I just think it's trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It's not a good site location given the constraints that are there. If the parcel was larger, it might make a difference. I think access to the parcel is a problem, and I don't think you can imagine any business going in there that's going to draw the amount of traffic that a McDonald's will. A lot of it's going to be in and out, but I think that's going to perhaps add to the congestion. And I think the point that was raised a moment ago by the gentleman with regard to the impact on the bikeway should be taken into consideration. I think that's something that the city of Richfield is really looking to develop and working in conjunction with our neighboring cities. And I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Would anyone else like to come forward to speak? I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. The public hearing is closed. Council?
I'll go ahead and make the motion so we can discuss it. That we approve a resolution denying approval of a preliminary and final plots for lots 1, 2, 3, Block 2 of Cedar Point Commons.
I'll second.
Okay, we have staff that wants to weigh in.
Yes, Madam Mayor and council members, I just wanted to address some of the issues that were brought up in the public hearing for the plat. A lot of them did go back to discuss the prior item, which was the PUD. I would note a couple of things. One is that a public hearing for the PUD was held. That was held before the Planning Commission. That's our, not only our practice, but that's what is, that's what's provided for in the city ordinance, to provide that public hearing at the Planning Commission meeting. That's the way it happens on every project. Secondly, what was approved on item number 11 by the three members that voted for it was a resolution that had a whole laundry list of findings, and the city council reviews the staff reports, reviews the materials that we send you. There's not a need for you to go item by item and discuss each of those findings, and that's never the case. The case is you review the document, and you, if there are certain findings in there that you might find objectionable, they can certainly be removed, and a resolution can be approved with or without those individual findings. By virtue of the fact that the majority of the council approved the resolution as is, each one of the findings in that resolution were approved. So, and I don't know if the city attorney wants to add anything to that.
Madam Mayor and Council, Director Stark kind of took all the words right out of my mouth. I just have to concur, I guess. First of all, I was going to mention too, the code requirement law requires a public hearing. That was held. You're not legally obligated to hold another public hearing, so I would respectfully disagree with the assertion that there was anything unlawful that happened here tonight. And I also agree that the record is full of reasons. If this were simply denied on the basis that we could do better, I might be relaying some concerns about that, but I don't think that's the case here. I think based on what I've been told, the Planning Commission had a lengthy discussion over concerns, and the written record reflects that.
And then I would just add that, again, the Planning Commission is advisory in nature. What they provided to you, what they discussed, didn't discuss, that's a factor in how you vote. That's not the prevailing factor. Otherwise there wouldn't really be a need for the Planning Commission or the City Council to act on items. It would just end at the Planning Commission. And, in terms of building the record, I would say that, again, the Planning Commission made an advisory motion. You relied on your own findings, your own thoughts, your own review of the documents and the materials in making your actions.
Councilmember, did you want to add anything or have any conversation?
Just the fact that, I did meet with all these people on that one side, and I have to go with what my constituents said, and agree with them. So my vote wouldn't have been changed hearing what they said before time and that. I have to go with what the people in my area have put before me, whether it's my personal opinion or not. So, so that's all I guess I have to say.
And you and I have had some conversation, because this is your east side, so I support you in that. And I have talked to other folks too, and they have reiterated some of the same concerns that I've heard here tonight. Again, I don't think there's anybody who's against McDonald's, because I think we've all taken our children or grandchildren there, and I think it has a lot of merit. And then the McDonald's in our community is a great asset, I think. Where it's at. That being told, to Councilmember Sandal comment about wanting to hear this stuff before, I don't mind hearing those kinds of things, but I think it's one-sided, because it's certainly for that side of the business. And I have been in conversation with two developers that are currently working in our community right now, and they are saying that restaurants are approaching them, sit-down restaurants, to talk to them further now that the economy is coming back. And I think when we look at the HRA's decision to move forward with a different type of project, there for housing, and also just knowing the stats of that target, I think that there's opportunities still for similar to what the people had asked for before, and the goals of the PUD and some of the things that we had wanted. So I don't think that would sway me, because I found it one-sided. Council members?
Number of things I'd like to say, but I'm not going to.
Okay, all right. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Councilmember Sandal, you have the next item.
Thank you, Your Honor. Item 13 is appointment of additional persons to city advisory commissions. And prior to our meeting, we interviewed 3 applicants who were interested in applying for the city commission vacancies that we currently have. And I would like to move the various candidates as follows. I would recommend that we appoint Alexander Dahl to the Arts Commission for the term ending January 31st, 2016. And Mirza Baig, I believe, B-A-I-G, to the Human Rights Student Commission or Youth Commission appointment for the term ending August 31st, 2014. And Emilia Gonzalez Avalos, I would recommend she be appointed to the current vacancy on the Human Rights Commission that I understand is there. And I don't know the expiration date, but the longest one that's available would be my recommendation.
I'll move.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to make a comment. Are we able to introduce our one commissioner now?
Yeah, we can.
You want to come up here and stand and say hello to the audience?
Yes, sat through all of this meeting. Yes, it was.
Just give a little bit about yourself.
Your name and why you came to the...
I'm Alexander Dahl. I live at 910 Ray Drive, and I've been in Richfield my whole life, and I was looking forward to contributing to the arts community.
That's wonderful. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And if I can, Your Honor, just to let folks at home know, we still have additional openings on the Arts Commission, Friendship City Commission, and then for the Youth Commission vacancies, we have 1 vacancy for the Advisory Board of Health, 1 for the Human Rights Commission, and 2 for the Friendship City. So anyone who has an interest in any of those commissions, please feel free to submit your applications. You can go online to the city website and look for the city commissions, and there will be an application you can complete. Or you could call City Hall and ask to have one mailed to you if you're not a computer person. And then also, we will be looking at next year's applications, because every year we review applications, and there's always some people that have been on for the full terms they're allowed and that will be going off. So you should check. Usually we start seeking applications, help me out, Cheryl, when? December? December. So you might want to check it out and think about applying for some of our other commissions at that time. Thank you.
City Manager's report?
The only thing I can report is that City Manager Devich will be here for the next City Council meeting. Thank you for making this a good experience for me.
Mm-hmm. And may I just reiterate, the Richfield Magicians are playing. Their first home full game is Saturday, and Sunday, both. 7 p.m. on Saturday, 5 p.m. on Sunday. So exciting times. It's nice to have a hockey team here. Claims and payroll.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing no further action, I call this meeting adjourned.